November 28, 1943. 0342 hours. The Philippine Sea. Commander Eugene Fluckey peers through the periscope of USS Barb as moonlight reveals an extraordinary sight cutting through the dark waters ahead. A convoy of 19 cargo vessels stretched across 4 miles of ocean, their hulls riding low with critical supplies bound for the Japanese home islands. Between them, only 3 escort destroyers patrol in lazy patterns, confident that these waters remain secure from American reach. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. What Tokyo Command doesn't yet comprehend is that their entire economic lifeline now moves through a killing zone patrolled by wolves they cannot see, cannot hear, and cannot stop. The submarine war in the Pacific has reached a tipping point, and Japan's island empire built on conquest stands on the edge of starvation it will never see coming until far too late. The revelation strikes through Japanese naval command like lightning through a paper house. For 2 years, imperial planners operated under an assumption that proved catastrophically wrong. American submarines, they calculated, represented a manageable nuisance. Outdated thinking from the First World War suggested submarines served best attacking warships, not the unglamorous merchant traffic that formed the circulatory system of Japan's Pacific Empire. That miscalculation would cost them everything. Commander Fluckey's targeting solution reveals the strategic blindness that has already doomed Japan's war effort. His submarine carries 24 Mark 18 electric torpedoes, weapons that leave no telltale wake of bubbles leading back to the launch point. Surface speed of 30 knots. Range of 4,000 yards. Warhead payload of 570 pounds of Torpex explosive compound, 60% more powerful than traditional TNT. Each torpedo represents technology specifically engineered to sever the supply lines connecting Japan's conquered territories to the resource-starved home islands. The mathematics of empire collapse plays out in tonnage calculations that Japanese logistics officers track with growing horror throughout 1943. Japan's industrial base requires 7 million tons of shipping capacity operating continuously to sustain both military operations and civilian survival. Rice from Indochina, oil from the Dutch East Indies, iron ore from Malaya, coal from Manchuria, rubber from captured British territories. Every calorie of food, every gallon of fuel, every bullet manufactured in Japanese arsenals depends on merchant vessels crossing thousands of miles of open ocean. Lieutenant Commander Nakamura Hiroshi, directing convoy operations from Manila headquarters, watches his plotting boards with creeping dread as red pins marking sunken vessels multiply across the Philippine Sea, the East China Sea, the waters surrounding Formosa. September losses total 81,000 tons. October reaches 93,000 tons. November projections suggest 120,000 tons will vanish beneath the waves before year's end. The pattern reveals something far worse than random raiding. American submarines operate with intelligence precision, targeting specific choke points where geography forces merchant traffic into predictable channels. When Fluckey's first torpedo slams into the lead freighter's engine room, the explosion tears through steel plating with surgical precision. The vessel, Taihoku Maru, carries 12,000 tons of aviation fuel and sealed drums bound for air bases in the Philippines. Secondary explosions transform the night into artificial daylight as burning fuel spreads across the water's surface. The convoy's formation disintegrates into chaos as captains execute emergency maneuvers, each vessel turning independently without coordination, creating perfect targeting opportunities for the predator lurking beneath the surface. The engagement unfolds with methodical efficiency. Fluckey's submarine executes a textbook approach, maintaining depth of 60 feet, speed reduced to 3 knots to minimize noise signature, positioning Barb perpendicular to the convoy's course for optimal torpedo spread patterns. His fire control team calculates bearing, range, target speed, and angle on the bow with practiced precision. The TDC, Torpedo Data Computer, processes variables instantaneously, providing firing solutions that earlier submarine commanders could only estimate through experience and intuition. 3 torpedoes launch in 15-second intervals, their electric motors propelling them silently toward the merchant vessels whose crews remain unaware of approaching destruction. The first strikes Hokushin Maru amidships, breaking the freighter's spine and sending 8,000 tons of raw rubber to the ocean floor. The second finds Yamashiro Maru, a passenger cargo combination vessel transporting 2,000 Japanese soldiers and 6,000 tons of ammunition. The resulting explosion registers on seismographs in Manila 200 miles distant. Captain Yoshida Kenji, commanding the escort destroyer Asakaze, responds to the attack with tactics that prove tragically obsolete against American submarine technology. His vessel charges toward the estimated firing position, crew manning depth charge racks loaded with Type 95 anti-submarine weapons. Each charge contains 220 pounds of explosive, set to detonate at predetermined depths. The destroyer makes its attack run, dropping a pattern of 6 charges that create towering columns of water but strike nothing except empty ocean. Fluckey's submarine has already relocated, moving silently at 400 feet depth, far below the depth charge settings that Japanese doctrine considers adequate. The tactical disparity becomes apparent through bitter experience that Japanese anti-submarine forces accumulate throughout late 1943 and into 1944. American submarines possess capabilities that render traditional countermeasures ineffective. Maximum operating depth of 400 feet compared to Japanese estimates of 200 feet. Silent running procedures that reduce mechanical noise to levels undetectable by Japanese hydrophones beyond 1,000 yards. Battery capacity allowing submerged operations lasting 48 hours before requiring surface recharge. Radar systems that detect escort vessels long before visual contact occurs, enabling submarines to avoid unfavorable engagements while positioning for optimal attacks. Lieutenant Tanaka Masao, surviving officer from the sunken Hokushin Maru, provides testimony during debriefing that reveals the psychological impact on Japanese merchant crews. His report describes attacks that materialize without warning, torpedoes arriving from impossible angles, submarines that vanish after striking and reappear hours later to attack the same convoy again. American submarine commanders demonstrate patience and tactical sophistication that Japanese training manuals never anticipated. They track convoys for days, studying escort patterns, identifying the weakest vessels, waiting for optimal firing positions regardless of time required. The human cost extends far beyond military casualties. Merchant marine crews, drafted from fishing villages and coastal communities throughout Japan, find themselves thrust into maritime warfare for which they received minimal preparation. Most merchant vessels lack even basic defensive armament. Communication equipment proves inadequate for reporting attacks or coordinating with naval escorts. Life-saving equipment falls short of requirements for the crew sizes typically embarked. When torpedoes strike at night in rough seas hundreds of miles from land, survival becomes a matter of chance rather than preparation. Commander Fluckey surfaces USS Barb 4 hours after the attack, his lookouts scanning horizons clear of enemy contact. The submarine's radio antenna rises into tropical air as communications officer Lieutenant Williams transmits encrypted contact report to Pearl Harbor headquarters. Details of the engagement flow across thousands of miles of Pacific Ocean within minutes. 19 merchant vessels encountered. 6 attacked. 5 confirmed sinking. Estimated tonnage 38,000 tons. 0 damage to attacking submarine. Mission continuing. At Pacific Fleet Submarine Command Headquarters in Hawaii, operations officers add Fluckey's report to growing evidence that American undersea campaign has achieved strategic momentum. Daily intelligence summaries compiled from multiple sources paint a comprehensive picture of Japanese merchant marine deterioration. Radio intercepts reveal desperate calls for assistance from torpedoed vessels. Aerial reconnaissance photographs document ships abandoned in harbors due to fuel shortages. Coast watchers throughout the Pacific Islands report declining frequency of Japanese supply runs to isolated garrisons. The statistical reality accumulates with mathematical inevitability. January 1944 merchant losses reach 172,000 tons. February adds 148,000 tons. March exceeds 200,000 tons as American submarine force reaches peak operational strength. 51 fleet submarines now patrol Japanese supply routes simultaneously, each boat equipped with increasingly sophisticated technology and commanded by officers who have refined their tactics through months of combat experience. Captain Oikawa Toshiro, appointed to command Japan's merchant marine protection in early 1944, inherits an impossible situation. His available resources include 42 escort vessels of various types, most designed for coastal defense rather than open ocean convoy duty. Aircraft assigned to anti-submarine patrol total fewer than 100, operating from bases scattered across thousands of miles of conquered territory. Depth charges, submarine detection equipment, and trained personnel all exist in quantities insufficient for the defensive mission Tokyo demands. Oikawa's tactical directives reflect desperate adaptation to overwhelming threat. Convoy sizes increase to concentrate defensive resources, but larger formations move more slowly and present more lucrative targets when submarines penetrate escort screens. Routing changes attempt to avoid known submarine patrol areas, but American intelligence derived from broken Japanese codes provides advance warning of convoy movements. Night transit protocols require all vessels to observe strict light discipline, but moonlit nights offer sufficient visibility for surface attacks while darkness prevents effective air cover. The strategic implications reverberate through every aspect of Japan's war effort. Fuel oil shortages force Imperial Navy to base major warships in occupied territories near refineries rather than concentrating forces for decisive operations. Aircraft production suffers as aluminum shipments from Southeast Asia arrive irregularly or not at all. Ammunition expenditure requires strict rationing as raw material supplies dwindle. Food distribution throughout the home islands tightens progressively as rice imports from conquered agricultural regions fail to arrive. Commander Lawrence Daspit, captain of USS Tenosa, experiences the strategic campaign from a perspective that reveals American submarine operations' systematic nature. His patrol orders assign specific sectors within designated operational areas. Intelligence briefings provide detailed information on expected convoy routes, typical escort compositions, known minefield locations, and priority target identification. The submarine force operates not as individual raiders but as coordinated elements of a comprehensive blockade designed to strangle Japan's maritime logistics. Daspit's encounter with the 20,000-ton tanker Tonin Maru demonstrates both American tactical advantages and the technical problems that occasionally plague submarine operations. His initial spread of 4 torpedoes produces only one detonation despite perfect firing solutions on a stationary target. Subsequent attacks yield similar failures as defective magnetic exploders cause torpedoes to detonate prematurely or pass beneath targets without exploding. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The engagement, while frustrating for Daspit's crew, contributes valuable data to Bureau of Ordnance engineers working frantically to resolve torpedo reliability problems that have plagued the submarine force since war's beginning. By mid-1944, improved Mark 14 torpedoes with contact exploders and corrected depth-keeping mechanisms transform American submarines into reliable ship killers. Commander Richard O'Kane, commanding USS Tang, demonstrates the enhanced capability during a single patrol that sinks 10 merchant vessels totaling 39,000 tons. His tactics exploit Japanese convoy doctrine's predictable nature, attacking from positions that force escort vessels to choose between pursuing the submarine or maintaining station on surviving merchantmen. The Japanese response grows increasingly desperate as losses mount beyond sustainable levels. Vice Admiral Fukudome Shigeru, commanding naval forces in the Philippines, implements radical defensive measures including ultra-shallow water routing that forces merchant ships within miles of coastlines where submarines face grounding risks. The tactic succeeds temporarily in reducing losses but creates massive inefficiencies as vessels must steam hundreds of additional miles following coastline contours rather than direct ocean routes. Submarine commanders adapt with characteristic aggression. Lieutenant Commander Dudley Morton, captain of USS Wahoo, pursues targets into waters Japanese considered too shallow for submarine operations. His bold approach, threading through coral reefs and uncharted shoals while tracking convoys visible against coastal backgrounds, demonstrates the aggressive spirit that Admiral Charles Lockwood cultivates throughout the submarine force. Morton's successes inspire emulation, and soon American submarines hunt prey in harbors, anchorages, and coastal waters Japanese planners assumed provided sanctuary. The technological evolution continues accelerating American advantages. Improved radar systems detect targets beyond visual range in any weather conditions. FM sonar provides precise target tracking data during submerged approaches. Sophisticated radio direction finding equipment allows submarines to home on Japanese radio transmissions. Enhanced battery designs extend submerged endurance. Upgraded air conditioning systems enable operations in tropical waters that would otherwise prove unbearable for crews during extended patrols. Lieutenant Yamamoto Ichiro, one of few surviving merchant marine officers with 2 years continuous service, provides testimony that captures the psychological toll on Japanese crews. His account describes convoys departing Singapore where 2/3 of vessels never reach destinations. Crews sleep in life jackets with emergency gear always at hand. Captains plot courses based not on efficiency but on which routes might avoid submarine concentrations, though accurate information about American patrol areas proves impossible to obtain. The constant tension, he reports, reduces experienced seamen to exhausted shadows of their former selves. The cascading consequences extend into unexpected domains. Japanese fishing fleets, requisitioned for military logistics, cease normal operations, eliminating a crucial protein source for the home island's population. Merchant marine casualties reach levels where qualified officers become unavailable for new construction vessels. Training programs abbreviated due to urgent operational demands produce captains and crews lacking fundamental skills. Insurance costs for maritime cargo, where available at all, reach prohibitive levels that add massive expense to already strained military budgets. Commander Howard Gilmore, captain of USS Growler, exemplifies the personal courage underlying American submarine success during an engagement that costs him his life but saves his vessel and crew. After surfacing to attack a damaged merchant vessel with deck guns, Growler collides with an escort destroyer in darkness. The resulting action sees Gilmore wounded on the bridge, unable to reach the conning tower hatch before his boat must dive to avoid destruction. His final command, "Take her down," ensures his submarine survives while he goes down with his ship. The sacrifice represents the human dimension behind the statistical reports flowing back to Pearl Harbor. By autumn 1944, Japan's merchant marine exists more as memory than functioning system. Available shipping tonnage drops below 3 million tons, less than half the minimum required for basic sustainment. Convoys depart ports half empty because cargoes accumulate in forward areas with no vessels available for loading. Critical war materials stack on docks in Saigon, Singapore, and Manila while factories in Japan shut down for lack of raw materials. The silent starvation of empire proceeds with mathematical certainty, each submarine torpedo removing another piece from a structure already collapsing under its own weight. Commander Fluckey, promoted and assigned to command USS Barb for a second patrol series, witnesses the final phase of merchant marine disintegration during operations off the China coast. His targets now include small coastal freighters, fishing trawlers pressed into cargo service, even sailing vessels attempting to move supplies through shallow waters where submarines traditionally avoided operations. The desperation of Japanese logistics becomes apparent in the nature of vessels risking ocean transit. Nothing remains too small, too old, or too unseaworthy to be sent to sea with critical cargoes. The strategic victory achieved by American submarines proceeds with little public awareness or recognition. Unlike massive carrier battles or dramatic island invasions, submarine operations occur in isolation, their success is marked only by vessels that fail to arrive, supplies that never reach destinations, and industrial facilities that fall silent from lack of materials. Yet the impact proves decisive beyond question. Japan's empire, built through conquest and maintained through maritime commerce, withers from starvation imposed by an enemy striking from beneath the waves with relentless efficiency. Captain Nakagawa Shinji stands on the bridge of his escort destroyer Hamikase as dawn breaks over the Luzon Strait on March 15, 1944. His vessel leads a convoy of 14 cargo ships carrying the last operational reserves of aviation gasoline from Borneo refineries to airfields defending the Philippines. Intelligence reports suggest American submarines concentrate in these waters, yet no alternative routes exist. Every gallon of fuel his convoy delivers might power fighters that could slow the American advance. Every vessel that fails to arrive accelerates the Empire's descent into paralysis. The radio crackles with a transmission that freezes Nakagawa's blood. Convoy Baker 7 reports torpedo attack, location 200 kilometers southeast. 3 vessels hit in the opening salvo. Escorts pursuing contact but submarine has gone deep. Request air support. The message cuts off abruptly, replaced by static that speaks volumes about Baker 7's fate. Nakagawa's plotting officer marks the position on the chart, adding another red circle to waters already thick with symbols marking previous attacks. The pattern reveals an uncomfortable truth. American submarines no longer avoid Japanese anti-submarine forces. They attack through them, accept the risk of depth charge runs, and emerge to strike again. Commander Samuel Dealey commanding USS Harder receives the contact report from a coast watcher station hidden in the Philippines. Japanese convoy formation of 12 to 15 vessels heading north through San Bernardino Strait, estimated arrival at intercept point in 6 hours. Speed 9 knots. Light escort reported. The information flows through intelligence networks that have become devastatingly effective at tracking Japanese maritime movement. Every convoy departure gets noted, every course change observed, every destination predicted with accuracy that turns the Philippine waters into a shooting gallery where submarines position themselves ahead of prey following predictable paths. Dealey's approach technique demonstrates the evolution of American submarine tactics through 3 years of Pacific warfare. Rather than trailing convoys and attacking from astern, he positions Harder directly in the convoy's projected path, lying motionless at periscope depth, allowing targets to come to him. The technique requires precise navigation, nerves of steel, and absolute confidence in intelligence accuracy. Get the position wrong by 5 miles and the convoy passes beyond intercept range. Surface for a look at the wrong moment and escorts spot the periscope. But execute correctly and the submarine occupies the perfect firing position when targets steam directly into the killing zone. The morning sun climbs higher as Nakagawa's convoy enters the strait. His lookouts scan horizons with binoculars, searching for periscope feathers or torpedo wakes. The destroyer's sonar operator listens intently to underwater sounds, trying to distinguish submarine propeller noise from biological interference in ocean currents. Every man aboard Hamakaze understands their mission's critical nature. The aviation fuel in those tankers represents Japan's capacity to defend the southern approaches. Without it, American bombers will strike the home islands with nothing to oppose them. Dealey watches through his periscope as the convoy materializes precisely where intelligence predicted. His executive officer calls bearing and range while the torpedo data computer processes firing solutions for multiple targets. The lead vessel, a 10,000-ton tanker riding low in the water, presents a perfect profile at 1,500 yards. Behind it, 3 more tankers follow in column formation. The escorts patrol on the flanks, their positions leaving the convoy center exposed to a submarine position dead ahead. The first torpedo leaves Harder's forward tube at 0847 hours, its electric motor driving it silently through clear tropical water toward the lead tanker's port quarter. Dealey fires 4 more torpedoes at 8-second intervals, spreading them across the convoy's width to ensure multiple hits regardless of minor targeting errors. The crew counts seconds in tense silence. 45 seconds until impact. The sound of the explosion carries clearly through the submarine's hull, followed rapidly by 3 more detonations that confirm successful strikes on multiple vessels. On Hamakaze's bridge, Nakagawa sees the lead tanker erupt in flames as burning gasoline spreads across the water like liquid fire. 2 more tankers take hits almost simultaneously, their hulls torn open below the waterline, aviation fuel pouring into the ocean in rainbow sheens that ignite from the first vessel's flames. The strait transforms into an inferno as thousands of tons of refined petroleum burn with black smoke rising into morning sky visible for 50 miles. Dilley drives harder deep as Hammercase charges toward the attack position. Depth charges begin exploding overhead, their concussive force shaking the submarine's steel frame, light bulbs shattering, loose equipment crashing to deck plates. The destroyer makes 3 attack runs, dropping full patterns each time, but harder twists through evasive maneuvers at 400 feet depth, well below the charge settings that Nakagawa's sonar operator has calibrated based on outdated intelligence about American submarine capabilities. After 2 hours of fruitless pursuit, Hammercase must return to the burning convoy. Nakagawa faces the grim task of attempting salvage operations amid drifting flames and oil slicks. 4 tankers burning or sunk. 2 more damaged and taking water. 8 vessels remaining, now bunched together and vulnerable to follow-up attacks. The escort destroyer has expended 70% of its depth charges without confirming a single hit on the attacking submarine. His after-action report will make painful reading at headquarters, but the truth cannot be disguised. American submarines operate with impunity in waters Japan must control to survive. Lieutenant Commander Hideo Tanaka, senior surviving officer from the tanker Kyakudo Maru, floats in the water for 6 hours before rescue arrives. His testimony reveals the terror that has become routine for Japanese merchant crews. The torpedo struck without warning while crew was at breakfast stations. The explosion killed 30 men instantly and ignited fuel in the forward cargo tanks. Within minutes, flames engulfed the superstructure. Crew abandoned ship into water covered with burning oil. Men screamed as fire consumed them. Those who dove deep enough to escape the flames surfaced to find their skin already burning. Of 212 crew members aboard Kyakudo Maru, 73 survived the sinking. Only 49 lived long enough to reach rescue vessels. The pattern repeats itself across every ocean area where Japanese merchant shipping operates. In the East China Sea, Commander Eugene Sands commanding USS Wahoo intercepts a convoy carrying troops and equipment from Shanghai to reinforce garrison forces in the Philippines. His attack sinks 3 transports loaded with 5,000 soldiers. The troops, packed into cargo holds with insufficient life-saving equipment, go down with their ships. Fewer than 800 survive. The loss represents more than a tactical defeat. It demonstrates Japan's inability to move military forces between occupied territories without suffering catastrophic attrition to an enemy they cannot see and cannot fight effectively. Off the coast of Formosa, Commander Dudley Walker in USS Scamp tracks a convoy for 3 days, studying the escort's patrol patterns, timing their depth charge intervals, noting their sonar search procedures. When Walker finally attacks, he does so with complete knowledge of how the escorts will respond. His 6 torpedoes sink 4 cargo vessels while Scamp evades counterattacks by exploiting gaps in the escort screen that Walker identified during his patient stalking phase. The engagement exemplifies the tactical sophistication American submarine commanders developed through experience and aggressive training that emphasized individual initiative and calculated risk-taking. Admiral Shigetaro Shimada, Chief of Imperial Navy General Staff, reviews Merchant Marine loss reports with mounting alarm during a conference at Tokyo headquarters in May 1944. The statistics paint an unambiguous picture of strategic catastrophe. Monthly shipping losses exceed new construction by ratios of 4 to 1. Available tonnage continues declining along a curve that projects complete merchant fleet exhaustion by early 1945. Emergency measures implemented throughout the previous year have failed to reduce attrition rates. Convoy size increases simply created larger targets. Routing changes proved ineffective against American intelligence that anticipated every modification. Additional escort vessels achieved nothing when submarines attacked from positions where escorts could not effectively respond. The discussion turns to desperate alternatives. Some officers advocate abandoning distant garrisons, consolidating shipping resources to defend a tighter perimeter. Others propose massive expansion of escort vessel construction, though shipyard capacity and material shortages make such expansion impossible. A few suggest negotiating with neutral nations to carry critical cargoes, though American diplomatic pressure has already closed that option. Every proposal faces the same underlying problem. Japan's maritime logistics require moving millions of tons of cargo monthly across thousands of miles of ocean. American submarines need only sink vessels faster than Japan can build replacements. The arithmetic admits no solution within Japanese capabilities. Commander Richard O'Kane, commanding USS Tang on its 5th war patrol, operates in waters off the Chinese coast where Japanese shipping has retreated seeking safety in shallow coastal routes. O'Kane pursues targets into depths where submarines traditionally refuse to venture, navigating through poorly charted waters by moonlight, surfacing in harbors to attack anchored vessels with deck guns. His aggressive tactics produce extraordinary results. Tang sinks 24 vessels totaling 93,000 tons across 5 patrols, establishing O'Kane as the most successful American submarine commander measured by tonnage destroyed. O'Kane's success stems from tactical innovations that other commanders study and emulate. He perfects the technique of firing torpedo spreads from multiple angles simultaneously, launching forward tubes then spinning the submarine to bring stern tubes to bear before targets detect the attack. He pioneers night surface attacks at close range, using radar to detect targets while remaining invisible in darkness. Most significantly, he demonstrates absolute confidence in his crew's ability to handle any situation, pushing equipment and personnel to performance levels that conservative commanders consider reckless but which produce results that justify the risks. The human cost of O'Kane's success manifests in Japanese survivors pulled from waters off Shanghai after Tang sinks a convoy of 6 vessels in a single night action. Interviews with rescued seamen reveal psychological trauma that has become endemic among merchant marine crews. They describe attacks that come from nowhere, torpedoes that explode before any evasive action possible, submarines that surface to finish damaged vessels with gunfire. The survivors report that most experienced officers and sailors have either died or refused further sea duty. Replacement crews consist of men with minimal training who pray constantly during voyages and show obvious relief when attacks come because at least the waiting has ended. By summer 1944, Japanese merchant marine operations have deteriorated to the point where cargoes accumulate at ports throughout the empire with no vessels available to move them. In Singapore, 90,000 tons of raw rubber sit exposed to weather and decay. At Balikpapan, oil storage tanks overflow while tankers that should transport the fuel lie torpedoed on the ocean floor. In Saigon, rice intended for the home islands rots in warehouses. Throughout occupied territories, populations that Japan promised prosperity instead face starvation as the maritime network connecting them to Japanese markets disintegrates. Commander Nakagawa, now assigned to Convoy Escort Command Center in Manila, watches the disintegration from a perspective that reveals the cascading failures permeating Japanese defensive systems. Radio communications between escorts and merchant vessels increasingly use clear voice rather than encrypted channels because coding equipment and trained operators no longer exist in sufficient numbers. Emergency rescue procedures break down as salvage vessels and support craft fall victim to submarine attacks. Medical facilities on escort destroyers overflow with burn victims and injured survivors. The psychological strain on escort crews manifests in declining effectiveness. Officers report crews showing extreme fatigue, reduced alertness, and in some cases, signs of combat stress that would once have resulted in medical relief but now must be tolerated because no replacements exist. Commander Morton Mama, captain of USS Sailfish, experiences a mission that illustrates the strategic impact extending beyond simple tonnage calculations. His patrol area includes waters near the Japanese home islands where coastal traffic moves vital supplies between ports. Mama's attacks over 3 weeks sink 19 small freighters and coastal steamers, vessels averaging 1,500 tons each. The individual sinkings seem insignificant compared to larger convoy battles in southern waters. But these small vessels represent the maritime equivalent of capillary blood flow, moving coal between mines and power plants, distributing food between agricultural regions and cities, transporting factory output to military depots. Their destruction creates shortages that ripple through Japanese society in ways that strategic planners in Tokyo never anticipated. The coal shortage becomes critical first. Electric power generation declines as coal supplies fail to reach generating plants. Factory production drops as manufacturers implement rotating blackouts. Railways reduce schedules as locomotive fuel runs short. Home heating becomes luxury for winter 1944 as what little coal reaches cities gets allocated to military production. The cascading effects extend into food distribution. Farmers cannot move harvests to urban markets without railway transport. Fish catches remain in coastal villages while city dwellers face protein shortages. The black market flourishes as traditional distribution systems collapse, with prices reaching levels that put basic nutrition beyond reach for growing numbers of Japanese civilians. Lieutenant Sato Kenji, operations officer at Yokosuka Naval District, compiles reports that quantify the starvation strategy American submarines have implemented, whether intentionally or as byproduct of targeting legitimate military logistics. Daily caloric intake for Tokyo residents has declined from 2,400 calories in 1942 to fewer than 1,600 calories by mid-1944. Protein consumption has dropped by 40%. Vitamin deficiencies appear with increasing frequency in medical reports. Children show developmental problems associated with malnutrition. The elderly die in increasing numbers from conditions that adequate nutrition might prevent. The statistics represent not merely humanitarian crisis but strategic victory. An empire cannot wage war when its population lacks sufficient food to maintain basic health and productive labor. Commander George Street, commanding USS Tarante, encounters the endgame of Japanese merchant marine operations during a patrol off Korea in early 1945. His targets now include wooden-hulled sailing vessels, converted fishing boats, even improvised craft constructed from salvaged materials. The vessels move cautiously through coastal waters at night, their crews hoping that darkness and shallow drafts provide protection from submarines known to operate in the area. Street's attacks sink 11 such craft over 2 weeks. The total tonnage barely reaches 3,000 tons. But each vessel carried food intended for Japanese cities or coal meant for factories or raw materials required for war production. Their loss adds incrementally to a cumulative deficit that has rendered Japan's economy incapable of supporting sustained military operations. The final statistics compiled by American submarine force at war's end reveal an accomplishment unmatched in naval warfare history. 1,400 Japanese merchant vessels sunk, totaling 5 million tons of shipping. Another 800 vessels damaged severely enough to require extended repair periods. The Japanese merchant marine, which numbered 6 million tons in December 1941, has effectively ceased to exist by August 1945. Available shipping capacity reaches barely 800,000 tons, and much of that remains in ports lacking fuel to operate. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.